right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, the life of a New York Mets fan is eerily similar to Charlie Brown from the Peanuts comic strip. Each time that Charlie Brown would get ready to kick the football, his pal Lucy would remove the ball before while leaving Charlie Brown just kicking air. That sums up being a Mets fan. I know it's football and baseball, two different things, but just when things appear headed in the right direction for this franchise over the years, the calamity of errors begins. Now, fans that are old enough to remember that infamous Tom Seaver trade in June of 1977 that brought tears and frustration to the eyes of grown men. And then from 1977 to 1983, the Mets would have 6 seasons where they lost at least 90 games, with the one exception over that stretch coming during the strike shortened year of 1981. Now, you think about the worst team that money could buy in 1992 when the Mets brought in the likes of Bobby Bonilla and aging Eddie Murray and so many others. And the Mets were supposed to contend for the National League East, and it just bottomed out from the word go. The Kenny Rogers fiasco in 1999 in Game 6 of the NLCS with the Mets trailing the series 3-2, and Rogers walked in the series winning run for the Atlanta Braves. The Mets would get back to the World Series in 2000, only to lose to the crosstown New York Yankees. And of course, Met fans to this day wonder how different that series could be going back to the base running errors of Timo Perez in game number one. Excuse me. You think back to game 7 of the 2006 NLCS where Carlos Beltran struck out to end the series with the bases loaded. The 2007 collapse where the Mets had a 7-game lead with 7 games to go in the season, and they ended up watching a postseason from home. Then the Bernie Madoff fiasco and the subsequent bargain basement shopping that was done by co-owners Fred and Jeff Wilpon. Then the Mets rallying to get to the World Series in 2015, but consistently collapsing late in the late inning scenarios in that series versus the Kansas City Royals. The consistent nickel and diming by the Wilpons over the years was going to continue to ruin the Mets until hedge fund manager Steve Cohen stepped in to purchase this team in 2020. And Cohen's intention to purchase the Mets was met with resistance by some team owners around Major League Baseball as they could foresee the tidal wave of money that was coming, which was good for the overall business of baseball, but bad for them as he was about to shake up their level of comfort. Now, when the Mets needed someone to be their team's general manager, it was a laundry list of executives that Cohen wanted, but he was consistently met with opposition until he stumbled upon former Los Angeles Angels GM Billy Epler. And now that Cohen has his front office in tow, he is off to the races in regards to improving the quality of the Mets franchise. You think about last year hiring Buck Showalter after the Wilpons had pieced the position of manager together with spit and glue guys over the years, redeveloping the team's minor league system. And it's still a process that the Mets are trying to complete. But the ultimate game changer has been Cohen's willingness to spend money. You think back to last year when the Mets made the trade to acquire Francisco Lindor from Cleveland. And then when it came to the extension, Cohen was right in the midst of that to get the all-star shortstop signed for a long-term extension with the Mets. Putting up the money last year to get starting pitcher Max Scherzer. You think back to this past season for the Mets, they reached the 100 win plateau for just the third time in franchise history. And there is a new buzz around this team. Now, so far this offseason, and I've talked about it recently as well, and I'll say it again, the Mets have committed more than $800 million to free agents this offseason. And we've seen the team owners around MLB create another level of the luxury tax threshold, which is basically the Steve Cohen tax. But the man who has a net worth of $16 billion obviously does not care. At the end of the day, Cohen is a fan at heart, but he's also a businessman as he wants to put a product on the field that the fans of New York City want to see. And then on top of that, Cohen understands it's sports, but it's also sports entertainment. And he understands that entertainment aspect, especially in New York City, is you have to put a box office smash out there if you are going to expect fans to support your product. Now, in spite of what some MLB team owners may think of Cohen, he is great for the game of baseball as you need your big market teams to be willing to spend some coin in order to carry the sport. And that is exactly what Cohen is doing. Now, this was lost in the shuffle for a long time because you think about the long-standing relationship between longtime Mets owner Fred Wilpon and former MLB Commissioner Bud Selig, which actually crippled the Mets franchise because, and for my money, you think about it, the Mets were in financial peril around the same time that the Los Angeles Dodgers were. But it came down to the fact that the McCourt family, Frank McCourt, was using the Dodgers as his own piggy bank, and that was a no-no in MLB's eyes. And I think there was a soft spot in Bud Selig's heart for Fred Wilpon due to the fact that Fred Wilpon went to bat for Selig when it came time for him to be the commissioner. Of course, he was a former owner of the Milwaukee Brewers, but nonetheless, I think that got in the way of business and it really hurt the Mets for a while. Now, the Mets overall do not, and I repeat, do not have the legacy of the crosstown New York Yankees, and they never will. But you can say that Steve Cohen is the modern George Steinbrenner because of his willingness to spend money, spend top dollar, and put a quality product out there on the field. Now, Steinbrenner left no stone unturned in regards to putting that winner on the baseball diamond. And in his heyday, George Steinbrenner definitely drew the ire of some of the other MLB team owners. Now, the Mets could be fast turning into MLB's new villain with Steve Cohen leading the way. I know he's ruffled the feathers of some execs, and I know that there are going to be some teams out there that definitely want to show up the Mets in 2023. But make no mistake about it, he is changing the game of baseball. And also, make no mistake about it that players around baseball are taking notice to Cohen's willingness to spend, and so are their agents, a la Scott Boris. Because again, if you go back and watch the film when the sale of the Mets was finalized to Cohen, Scott Boras had a Kool-Aid smile on his face from chin to chin, from ear to ear rather, as he was more than happy to see a new team owner for the Mets and also somebody who was willing to spend money. And of course, some of Boras's clients have gotten paid over the last couple of years, courtesy of one Steve Cohen. Now, unlike years past under the ownership of the Wilpons, Cohen is spending the bread, but he's also doing it on players in their prime as opposed to guys that were on their last leg at the MLB level and looking for one last payday before retiring. Because you think about it, that was a Wilpon special. They brought in guys a la Roberto Alomar and Mo Vaughn that were at the end of their rope as far as being players at the MLB level, and they were getting paid for past work that they had done. Nonetheless, some of these guys that Cohen is bringing in right now, they're in their prime, and they're going to be Mets for the years to come. Now, yes, Cohen has spent a hefty amount of money, which does not, I repeat, does not guarantee a championship, but everybody around baseball knows who this man is right now. How will things work out for the Mets in 2023? Only time is going to tell. Like I said, buying a championship does not guarantee a title. But due to Cohen, there is a buzz around the Mets franchise, which has not been there since the glory days of the mid 80s. Steve Cohen is changing the game. This is just some of the first steps towards it. And I think he has still plenty of work ahead of him. But he is changing the game and he's also changing the culture around a franchise that has been known for finding ways to screw up. So let's see. He still got his work ahead of him. The Mets have still have their work ahead of them, but things are definitely different in Queens for the Mets on the watch of Steve Cohen. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.